is no longer a rural area in nature. There are 600 students already living in these developments highlighted in yellow, located between the two districts' proposed school sites. I may sound a little like Chicken Little sometimes, or the Peanuts teacher, the wah, 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 wah. But growth management is my role, and I am very passionate about this issue. I think we can all agree that this has been a very difficult year on many fronts. Both the BOCC, school board members, and their staff have experienced unimaginable hardships in addition to dealing with new administrative leadership and board members. However, the hyper-focus required to grapple with these unforeseen fires has been detrimental to non-immediate issues. In 2019, the school board purchased 60 acres on a site north of Bishop Road. The consistency process for the ILA allots the county 45 days to review the new school sites once submitted and deemed complete. In that case, the review spanned over 6 months because there were certain disagreements over the transportation methodology at that time. But once the transportation study concerns were addressed, unfortunately, the school site was found inconsistent with the comp plan due to lack of funding for transportation to support schools, which we fully understand the financial challenges. But right now, we need a high school and middle school because we're in an overcrowded situation today, and it will only continue to worsen. We also will need an elementary very soon. So, okay, next slide. They already have it. Okay. So, speaking of innovation, luckily sometimes stress breeds innovation. Within these challenging times, the school board staff has been more innovative and creative than any other time with any other issue that we can control. On the property front, we are building a school site inventory for the next 15 years. Due to the increase in impact fee funding, thanks to everyone that's on this call, we are positioned to be more proactive than ever before. Instead of hoping for developers to set aside school sites, we are actively working with brokers to seek out properties in the area where we need the new schools. After the Bishop site was denied, we were fortunate enough to secure a contract on a 100-acre property in the same general area, which is on your screen. The district also pivoted in a number of ways due to the lack of middle school capacity. We converted a site in Waterset that was originally slated for an elementary to ensure that we squeezed out additional middle school seats that we desperately needed. The district placed a middle school at a high school, which that is very innovative for us. That was under construction at the time to build up that middle school capacity. We also developed a concept of converting Collins, as was mentioned earlier, to a PK8 to, again, get some more middle school capacity. The newest innovation, though, will be designs. We have a wonderful team of certified urban planners, and we would love complete streets everywhere. That's our dream. But unfortunately, that's not the reality due to funding. So what the district can control is innovative design, and we are proposing 3 schools on a 100-acre site that will provide immediate short-term relief. As we know, available properties are few and far between, so we're maximizing the use of our acreage. The district also would propose to move the buildings up to the street to create a sense of community and place, and really make the architecture the focal point. We are positioning buildings also for community access because that was a big ticket item through all of the Waimama public outreach. The district is stacking as many vehicles as possible on the site, and we're trying to think outside of the box every day. The site will be the biggest bang for the county's bucks and for the school district because we can pool the limited transportation funds into this area to support a substantial amount of new capacity. But we can't do this alone. We are required to work with the county so that we can collectively address off-site needs. Now I will hand it over to Mr. John Lyons to discuss the roadway needs in this area.
Good afternoon, John Lyons, Public Works. So we've been working really closely on all these projects with the school district staff, in particular on these sites down on West Lake and Bishop Road, and we'll focus mainly on the West Lake site right now. So that's about 1.5 miles from State Road 674 down to Bishop Road. There is development to the west, as Amber had indicated just a little bit ago. Bishop Road, or Westlake Road, and both Bishop are rural roads. They're narrow and have side ditches and no sidewalks to speak of, but for a little bit on Westlake Drive. Next slide, please. What we would propose to do is then make improvements along there. We're working in coordination with another piece of property south of the Westlake property, the west property, to potentially try to leverage some of the developer work that they're going to do and do some widening and include stuff to make it look more like a complete street, which would be sidewalks and potentially multi-use trails along that entire corridor. We think that helps becoming more of a walkable community to the school. It'll service up into the Waimama area too, which is not that far away. Next slide, please. So these are just some current photos of both Westlake Drive and Bishop Road and the intersections with both state roads. As you can see that with those improvements and continued growth in that area, there will have to be some intersection improvements and things such as widening of the shoulders, some of the stormwater conveyance, construction of those sidewalks as we spoke of. Most likely traffic signals will be warranted at both those locations if both sites are completely developed, particularly at Westlake and State Road 674. We're working with DOT as well. They have a project at least on the books. It's not in their current work program, but we're going to continue to work with them to see if we can do a joint project to make those improvements up at Westlake and 674 as well. I think it's time to pass it over to Adam at this point.
Yes. Thank you, John. Adam Gormley, Director of Development Services for Hillsborough County. So the process that these items are considered under is a school siting process that is grounded in an interlocal agreement that is in place amongst the school board, Board of County Commissioners, and the Planning Commission. That interlocal agreement sets out the process for school siting, as well as the zoning categories and comprehensive plan future land use categories in which schools can be considered. The process sets a very...
I think we've lost you, Mr. Gormley.
All right. Were you able to hear any of what I just said?
We heard the beginning. The process is, I think, is the last words I heard you say.
Okay. The process is set out in the interlocal agreement among the Board of County Commissioners, the school board, and the Planning Commission. It sets out the interlocal agreement sets out the zoning districts in which schools can be considered, as well as the future land use categories of the comprehensive plan. The agreement allows consideration of school in most areas, with the exception of manufacturing, heavy industrial, and airport zoning districts. The process for school siting is dependent on which type of school is being cited. Elementary and middle schools are cited as an administrative process, and high schools are a public hearing process in front of a land use hearing officer. However, if a school is proposed to be located within a planned development zoning district, that process is one that's decided by the Board of County Commissioners in lieu of the LUHO or administrative review process. Next slide. I got it. Thank you. So what do we look at during the school siting review? The main things that we're looking at are the availability of public facilities to support a proposed school, and as part of what we're required to do is in the interlocal agreement, we identify the timing and needs of all on-site and off-site improvements and public facilities needed to support a school, as well as who will be responsible for providing those improvements. The citing criteria also looks at avoiding any off-site impacts, and as such, sufficient parking and on-site vehicle circulation is something we look at the citing stage to ensure that cars queuing to pick up or drop off don't inhibit movement within the right-of-way. Following a successful citing, there is a site development review element, which is essentially the engineering review. In this, we look at the compliance with county tech manuals, stormwater, transportation circulation to the extent that has off-site impacts. One of the things we do not do in this process is we don't look at the site plan at least from the county, for the adequacy of the site plan as it relates to school needs. We're essentially looking at the off-site needs and any environmental impacts that might occur on-site with the school process. I'll just say that the work that's been done so far and the discussions that have been taking place and the collaboration between the two bodies has certainly made this the outlook for this process much I'd say brighter. We're able to work through and answer and identify and answer a lot of questions that may come up in the citing process before we get into it. And so it's very much appreciated, and we're very excited for moving forward with a collaborative spirit amongst us. Thank you.
Thank you. And does that complete that part of the presentation?
No,
Madam Chair, we do have the final section that we're going to run through briefly because we do think it's important for the respective boards to have an appreciation for what next steps and what current initiatives that lead to those next steps will yield. So with that, I'll turn it over to Amber again.
Thank you. Amber Dickerson. So in addition to immediate needs, we need to start addressing the future needs. We are in the midst of updating our long-range plan, and the initial findings show that 18 new schools will be needed in the next 15 years. We are in agreement with...
Okay. Ms. Dickerson, if you could somehow get more volume.
Okay. Can you hear me better?
Yes, much better.
Okay. Again, I was speaking to the needs, and our long-range plan has identified, we're in the process of updating it, and it is showing that 18 new schools are needed in the next 15 years. We are in agreement with the county that the ILA does need some work, but we must fix it soon so we can easily address, or more easily address, the school siting issues. It certainly has to be a team effort. So next slide, please. Again, we are somewhat in crisis mode. Unfortunately, Mr. Farkas and I met with the principal this week at Sumner High School, who has about 700 extra students than what the building was designed for at that school. And this is actually worse than we anticipated due to the unprecedented growth in this area. Shields Middle School is over capacity too. We're mitigating some of that with modular classrooms. Luckily, we pivoted 4 years ago to build Sumner High School in lieu of a middle school, but now we have capacity issues at both. So we had to tell the principal that we were working on high school and middle school seats, but have hit several roadblocks. So how do we fix it in the future? Again, we must change the ILA to expedite the timing that reviews take. We know absolutely the county needs information to make a school siting decision. But the information required must be clear, consistent, and not change. The district has a laundry list of items that we would love to fix in the ILA because as we use it more and more since 2008, we have noticed some fundamental flaws that are apparent and definitely desire to revisit it. We should collaborate as if we were on the same team, because essentially we are. We have different missions, but we're all serving the community to make it a better place for our residents to live, and the red tape has slowed the process a little bit in the innovation effort. So we have had a conversation with the county staff already about some potential ILA changes, and at this time, I will hand it over to John Patrick, who can go through some of the results of that initial meeting.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and board members. My name is John Patrick. I'm with Hillsborough County Community and Infrastructure Planning. So as Ms. Dickerson had mentioned, we have already started conversation about what can we do right away in improving the process so that we can plan better for new schools. It's 18 schools in the next 15 years. That's a lot of schools that we need. So the major thing that we need to do is, as Ms. Dickerson said, it is the interlocal agreement. Interlocal agreement has the processes and the requirements laid out, and those are the things that were adopted back in 2008 when the new growth management law came into being. Since then, it has not been a major update has not been done. There were some changes in 2016, so it's high time that we look into the ILA and re-examine what can be changed to make the process more understandable, and we have common understanding of the data needs from both sides and make the collaboration better. So that's what we have started the process of looking at and looking into that. The key word is collaboration. The more we collaborate, more the information we share, more better outcomes it's going to be. As you know, capital improvement program, especially transportation, we have a lot of needs, and we don't have all the resources in place to quickly change from one project to another and add more projects. So that is vital to know where the schools are needed, and closely working with the school board staff will be vital for realigning perhaps and looking at the school site in places where there is infrastructure already. So that is the most important thing that we are looking into. We will be looking at the interlocal agreement. We will bring it back to you as we continue to work on it, and that's only possible when we have close coordination with the school staff, which we already have now. That's a positive of all this collaboration that we have had. Regular meetings with the school and school district staff to address the site selection is important so that we can look at the infrastructure needs as they select sites and go through the process. So that is the process improvements that we are looking at, and we will be coming back to you with an ILA at some point of time. With that, I will pass it back to Greg.
Thank you, John Patrick. And thank you all for your attention. We know that this was a little bit of information to absorb. We apologize for not getting the PowerPoint out to you until yesterday, but as you can tell, there's a lot of work and a lot of moving pieces from our respective staffs. I will say that as a word of caution, that a PD has been filed for the West property, so please, if you would, restrict your remarks to the general concept of multiple schools on a single location. Please don't talk about necessarily the West property itself, although we will make arrangements to introduce into the record the transcript of this meeting. Also, I did want to wrap up by saying that the county administrator and superintendent have challenged us, and we've risen to that challenge to streamline this process and to make sure that we are going to be able to bring something back to you all by the end of the year with suggestions on the ILA. That's our goal. We'll do everything possible to accomplish that. In the meantime, I'm very heartened by the collaboration that we've seen from Chris and Amber and the respective school district staff, as well as our staff. We want to make sure this process works. We know it's a significant importance to the board, both boards, and it is to us as well. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And I know we're moving to boards plural discussion at this time. And I'll tell you on my participants list, it doesn't seem like everyone's on here, so you might have to get my attention or speak to me. Otherwise, or maybe some of the further names will show up. I'm not sure why all the names aren't here. But I will call on those and recognize we have quite a 14 people, I think, here. So I'm hoping that we can keep our remarks reasonably limited and give everyone a chance to say what they need to say as well. And so I don't, at this time, see hands up on my participant screen. Is there anyone who wished to speak at this time?
Oh, Lynn Gray wishes to speak.
You're
Board member
recognized. Uh-huh.
Shake Washington will wish to speak. Member Combs will be speaking. And Member Vaughn will want to speak. Superintendent Davis, would you like?
How
Okay.
about if I recognize you first? Member Gray, Chair Gray, and we'll move around, and if I see some commissioners, we can kind of mix it up a little. So
Yeah, oh, that's fine. However you wish to do it. I just
go ahead.
wanted to get started. And thank you very much to your staff for giving us an excellent overview, along with Amber Dickerson. The one point I wanted to share, in case that we haven't brought up, is, and I'll be very brief, the Bishop Road site. We've been trying to conquer that situation for many, many years, and those two court cases, the Fernandez versus Fernandez and the Hillsborough County School Board versus the Hillsborough County Board, I just need some clarity, because it says that our school district's legal position is that the school district cannot fund transportation. And in two cases, we have won those court cases. So, and this will come out later, but this is really to Adam, because I just don't understand why we are not moving in the direction where this Bishop Road is still a conundrum, when, we're not supposed to fund transportation unless, if it's not adjacent to or running through a school site. And I'm going to leave it at that for right now. That's just a preliminary comment, but I know that's an elephant in the room. And this is in the spirit of giving and getting. So anyway, but other than that, yes, I definitely agree that we should rewrite and update the interlocal agreement and put the timeline together for sure. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if I don't know if it's appropriate, Mr. Gormley. Did you just, is there any short response to that, or should we just wait, or
Yes.
is it
just
attorneys that should respond? I'm not sure.
As a brief response, yes, we are aware of those cases, and I think that there are different views on how those the cases govern us going forward. However, in the case of the Bishop Road site, really the issue was that there was not an identified infrastructure planned or in place to support the school, and neither the county nor the school district or any other means was in place to ensure that those transportation facilities would be in place to support the school at the time it was open. So really the siting decision on Bishop Road didn't hinge so much on the deck action case between the county and the school district. It was really more a factual question of was there infrastructure in place, and did it meet that test that's laid out in the interlocal agreement.
Okay. And Commissioner Overman, I'll go back and forth between the boards. Commissioner Overman, you're recognized.
Thank you, and thank you all. I think this is very important conversations, since I know that, there's been a lot of staff on solution finding, and there's been, I think, angst on both boards trying to figure out how to find the best way to move forward given the level of growth we're anticipating and have already experienced. And that is based on the proposed long-range plan, a process that will continue. Given we have 15 schools in South County that we're going to be short, I think working together is critically important. The current projects do indicate where we can work together and find success, and that's a good start. Even to the point of in the project for, get the name right, for the Westlake Bishop Road situation where there was a developer that was willing to build the surrounding infrastructure, given that or at least it looks like the developer to build sidewalk and dedicate right away appears to be a solution where all parties, those that bring the ability and capacity for living, and honestly bring children that want to go to the schools, and it looked like that was a collaborative process that has found a solution, because it's had more of an approach towards identifying where people are moving to, where they want to go, and how do we provide safety around the schools, and allow the developer to move forward because the capacity isn't there, because there may be a road infrastructure disagreement. So I'm glad to see that's happening, and that's happening for a larger school or a larger school complex, right? The processes that I see that are different relate to the greatest needs that we have in the county for schools. So, for example, what I heard, and which I don't quite understand the difference, but what I heard was for elementary and middle school, there's an administrative approval process. Whereas for high schools, which we are in still need of 3, but the biggest bulk of what we have to plan for right now, where there is, unfortunately, rubber hit the road problems because of the road infrastructure that still yet needs to happen there. The land use for the high school is a land use type of hearing. So there is an opportunity with the schools, with the roads and potential developers in the pipeline that are bringing children to those schools at the table for finding a good solution, as well as the community. So I'm curious if in the process of identifying best practices, if there's merit in considering that the elementary and middle schools that we're anticipating over the next 14, 15 years, that are 14 or 15 schools, maybe we should have a single type of process so that it's consistent and we can make sure that we have infrastructure planned for, roads planned for, and students planned for it in the building of schools, and how that fits into siting, because it seems as though that's where there may have been some opportunities for getting it right, but all the information may not have been fully vetted and solved at the initial land use hearing process. And I'll stop there, but there does, when I look at what we have to do versus what we have, it appears as though we have a lesser problem in the high school arrangement because we've been building high schools possibly, but also we do have a big bubble in the middle in the elementary school. So I think it's critically important that we get that right for the next 15 years. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. And I'll go to School Board Member Combs.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Pat, she will not be speaking yet at this time. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Let me then go to,
Washington will.
okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. The one thing that I realized, we being a new board member, we need to work together as a team because I think it's very important on both sides. I'm looking at it from the administrative point, being a former high school principal and area superintendent. These schools are important to be on the timeline, because the one thing I always remember back when we had more students than the school could accommodate, we had to be on double session. And double session is not really a great place to be in education, especially in the academic process, because you're putting students up early in the morning, especially because I don't ever recall in my 42 years having a middle school on double session. High schools we did, but even in high school when we had double session, the kids would come to school about 6:30 in the morning, and the second session would come about 12 o'clock. So the second session was really hard because those kids wouldn't leave school until about maybe 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And then if you have activities, that would be another problem because then they would stay late and the parents would have to come pick them up. And academic wise, you're cutting classes down because you're having less classes during those periods of time. So if we can maintain our timeline for building the schools and so forth, and whatever else we need to do, it really would be a great help. And it's really difficult with double session too, because you got to deal with transportation. You know, students have to leave about an hour and a half in order to get to school. So if you're talking about school starting at 7 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, you're getting ready to get on the bus, and which some of them do now. So, and then in the evening time, you say you get out at 5:30, you may not get home till 7 o'clock at night. And then you have to study and do all the other things you need to do. So I would just like to say, let's take a close look and we can work together as a team and come out ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheikh.
Thank you. We'll
yeah.
go to, and I'll let you recognize the school boards when we come back and forth, and I'll at this time recognize Commissioner Smith.
Got it. There's a system. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's good to be with all of you working together on this important issue. And I'm glad to see that our staffs and administrations are all happy that we're working together collaboratively on the specific projects that they've brought before us today as examples. These are Band-Aids, though, to the problem that we're in, this great need of unprecedented growth, needing 18 schools. So it's great that we're working together to put a couple of quick Band-Aids on these, making a couple of projects work. But we also are going to need to collaborate in new ways. Amber was talking about thinking outside the box. We're going to have to talk with each other and work together in new ways as we look at this ILA on the whole system, which in order to change the processes that have got us in this bind. So yes, we have to fix the symptoms, that we're seeing, but we have to treat the patient. We are, and work together on that. We are state mandated to provide schools concurrently with growth. We're state mandated just like with water. And we're running into a similar problem with water in South County. We have grown in unprecedented, unpredicted ways. Well, it didn't just happen to us. We are the people. And by we, I mean our county commission and our school district also has input into the process of permitting growth and development and planning growth and development. And we need to come together to have a long range plan, planning where we're going to put growth, where we're not, where we're going to put schools, where we're not. Because the way it's working right now is, near as I can figure, first, a whole bunch of development happens, and then, which we've all signed off on, the BOCC and the school district. And we signed off on all that big growth in South County. And now we have to find school sites for it to provide the school quick, because those kids are, moving in. So we look for a school site that has adequate transportation, vehicle circulation, safe routes to schools. Whoops, we've permitted all this growth in a place. You saw those pictures of Bishop Road and the Westlake Road. those are not adequate. They have no sidewalks, no bike lanes, drainage ditches on both sides. We've all seen the videos that mothers and fathers are sending us of their children walking to school on roads like that. They're walking in the ditches with cars going by at night. These are difficult places to find a school site. In fact, the last time I heard Ms. Dickerson come speak to our TPO, she was pointing out that there are no sites in South County that have adequate roads. And then this is where the complaint about red tape comes in, as if, if our county would streamline the process and eliminate the red tape, we could, provide the roads quickly or permit the schools on inadequate roads, one or the other, and that's just a no-win situation. That's a bind with, and if we keep doing the big process the same, we will keep having to put schools where the roads are inadequate, or readjust our county's road funding project to move Bishop Road ahead in the queue, ahead of roads Gibsonton Drive, Lithia Pinecrest, Van Dyke Road, whatever it is, that have been waiting for decades for their roads to be widened. We suddenly have to do this one instead because of poor planning and growth management. And so what I would ask is, when we get to this difficult work of looking at the process and how our ILA should agree that we're going to work together, I am hoping that we will find a way for the school district to be reviewing and commenting on growth as it happens as well, because otherwise what has been happening is a rezoning for 1,600 houses at a time on Bishop Road comes through the review process to the county commission, signed off from the school district saying, we're fine with that, go ahead. And then we, maybe one of us commissioners tries to say, well, where are you going to put the school? How are kids going to get to school? How's the circulation going to be? We don't have adequate roads in that area for a school for that many kids. And then we're told by the applicant, well, the school district is fine with it. The school district says they can work that out. So we need that input well upstream so we can make reasonable decisions about growth and where growth is happening when, so we can all see it coming and see ahead of time where we're going to need to put schools with and where we need to plan for better roads and sidewalks and complete streets, or else say, get an accurate review saying we can't put any more growth here until we've let the infrastructure catch up, which, as staff has pointed out, takes a long time. You don't just say, we'd like this road widened, and boom, it happens next year even. It doesn't. So we need to all be working together on a long-range plan of where this is going to happen. And I'll just close with saying, having the schools chase the developers' profits and try to pop up wherever the market happens to be the most convenient for big developers to be putting the next subdivision, I think is letting the tail wag the dog here. Maybe I would think a sensible approach would be trying to direct growth, manage growth to those areas in our urban core that already have schools that are well below capacity, rather than trying to put, allow more growth where the schools are way over capacity. So I know there are several schools in the urban core that are under capacity, and the more growth we can put there, where the schools already are, where the transportation and transit hopefully already is, the better we'll be in the long run as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair Gray, I'll recognize you for the next whomever there would like to speak.
Okay, thanks, Pat, and thanks, Mariella. We need to streamline this process. So we have Member Vaughn who would like to speak next. And here we go.
Thank you. First, I want to say I'm so grateful for this meeting and an opportunity to speak collaboratively. I think there's a lot of value in what Commissioner Smith just said. One of my questions, because I've had some meetings with Mr. Farkas and Mrs. Dickerson, is in our interlocal agreement, that's kind of where it seems to be the biggest disconnect when I trace back, some of the challenges that we're having. And I know the conversation is about amending that. And I'm just trying to get a better idea of what that really looks like, how we work collaboratively, who, is really in charge of that process. I know we for a timeline, but just getting an idea of what that would look like. That's really where I have the most questions, is about that agreement and making sure that it, is reflective of the conversations we're having now.
And
So do I need to clarify some questions?
I don't know if there's anyone that wanted to take a minute to address that right now, or
Ms.
maybe
Kemp,
we'll address it at the end.
It's Chris Farkas. So just quickly, if I could address part of it too, and what Ms. Smith said with very poignant comments as well. Part of the concurrency finding in the consistency of when it comes to the school district, we're a little narrow focused on the number of seats that are available. The communication, to your point about, hey, this may impact us down the road, isn't part of the current setup that we turn back into the county. So that's where I think the communication gap is, for lack of a better word. We know it's a trouble going down the path, and we don't really have a format to share that information with you. It's a very simple question. Is there seats in this area or one of the surrounding areas? And that's one of our big challenges. I think that Greg and I have committed to each other to make sure that I think having a deadline is helpful for us because there is a sense of urgency. So having a deadline of getting the ILA reviewed before the end of the year is going to be focused on things like each of us, from both sides of us, having 30 or 45 days to review it to ensure that we can get these done in a timely manner. And then another part of it is what Commissioner Smith said, which is, in addition to our is there seats in the neighboring areas, it's also, this is going to have an impact down the road as well. And adding a letter that traditionally we have not done, but we feel like it's something that could benefit the commissioners and benefit the school board. So we're very much committed to sharing some extra information, for lack of a better word, so that we can kind of help and put that in the consistency finding and put it in the plans to help out with Adam and his team and with the commissioners' review of that.
Thank you there. And did you have more to add, Member Vaughn, at this time?
No, I think what I heard was the end of the year looks like the timeline, and that's giving them some focus to kind of collaborate and figure out what that's going to look like. So I appreciate the answer on that.
Okay,
Thank you, Member Vaughn.
thank you. And I'll move to Commissioner Cohen.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think Commissioner Smith did an excellent job of describing what the long-term challenge is. And one of the things that she also made the analogy to what we're dealing with at Tampa Bay Water. One of the issues there is that there's a long-term challenge. There are also short and medium-term challenges. And I think that she laid out very well what it's going to take in order to sort of get us to where our process addresses the long-term needs. My question really relates to the short term. We have a lot of development and growth that's already approved. And we know that the school capacity as it stands is very strained. So what is it that you're doing and I'm really asking, I think, the county staff this, how are you sort of measuring this when it comes to permitting time? How are projects being evaluated for whether or not they can even begin if we know that there's this challenge in terms of needs in the schools?
So, Commissioner and board members, What Commissioner Cohen identified is exactly the challenge situation, the crisis situation, if you will, on school capacity. And the fact of the matter is we have developments that are coming in the door today in South County, and they are being stopped at the threshold because there is not there's not adequate school capacity to meet the concurrency standards. So it is a real problem. It's a real short-term, immediate challenge that we're facing. And I think part of what we've been talking about and collaborating together is what can be done in the immediate term, short term, to try to address that problem in a way that gets infrastructure in schools built in a way that can support the development decisions that have already been made.
Just to be clear, when you say that are coming in the door, you don't mean coming in the door for zoning approval. You mean coming in the door actually for permitting.
Yes, sir. That's correct. They're coming in the door. These are projects that have already been zoned or have had zoning entitlements in place. They come in for permitting, either to initiate a platting process to create new lots or for a multifamily project. At the very outset of that process, there is a review, a concurrency review done for various infrastructure services, including schools. So yes, sir, this is at the platting stage when they're seeking to have permits issued so they can actually build homes and create impacts.
So just to give us a sense of it, if something is stopped dead in its tracks now, how long would it take for it to for the school capacity to catch up with the backlog?
I don't know if I can answer the backlog question. I'll see if either Chris or Amber can address the backlog.
I'll be happy to talk to it a little bit. It's Chris Farkas. And we don't want to talk about it too much because it revolves around the Westlake property. I know you guys will be voting on that, but that's a short-term solution. If we're able to get that approved and we can put it in our 3 to 5 year plan, if it's 3 years out, we can have those agreements where we can allow the development and we'll have the concurrency that goes along with it. There's a lot of problems down there, so we've got issues at the middle and high school level right now, elementary soon to come. But short term, each time we get a new school build, it allows a little bit more capacity and allows a little bit more development. We'd like to be in front of that and be proactive so that developers don't have to wait for that to happen. If we can find the sites and know they're in our 3 and 5 year plans, then the developers don't have to come. We just assign seats based on the schools that are coming down the road. But right now, it's single plots of land being approved where we can put schools there. As soon as we have those schools assigned and funded, which we do, then we'll allow more development that comes through with the number of seats for that school that's being built.
And you don't really have a sense of how long, because if things are starting to get gummed up, my sense is that the line is then going to start getting longer and longer. And I just wonder how long it takes for us to build our way out of this. I mean, that's really what you're saying.
Commissioner Greg Horwoodell here. That is part of the challenge because it's not just the school facility itself. It is also all the ancillary support infrastructure that needs to be addressed. And as you know from the number of workshops we've had regarding transportation, we have significant challenges with transportation. Part of what we want to do with the school district is figure out a way to sync up our CIP with their master plan. That will be part of our conversation when we discuss the ILA. And our intent is to bring back something that, isn't just a Band-Aid, that is something that's more thoughtful, that's long range, and that has the support of both administrations that we can recommend to the board, our respective boards. This is a path going forward. Some schools may need to be accelerated. Some of our transportation improvements may need to be accelerated. It will depend on, as we go through that process, what we're able to identify and then bring back to you at a later date, before the end of the year.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay. Chair Gray, is there?
Absolutely. Thank you, Pat. We'll now hear from Member Hahn.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Gray. appreciate Member Commissioner Cohen's comments. He cleared some things up for me, so thank you, sir. And I appreciate Commissioner Smith's comments. You're a big picture thinker. I can appreciate that. And I share a lot of your concerns, especially as they're related to the interlocal agreement. Very much in favor of what other members have said around revisiting that and reworking that agreement. You know, looking at to expedite the timelines and really reviewing the agreement and making sure there's really clear and consistent processes moving forward. Because what I've heard is, you know, as we move through the process that exists, sometimes the goalpost is moved along the way, making it harder to get to the end of the road. So I'd like to respectfully ask that we can maybe by the end of this meeting, as in a collaborative effort, commit to reviewing this process and this agreement and completing it by the first of the year. Because I think it is in all of our best interests. We all are working with a limited amount of funds, and we need to budget our money moving forward, and it will help with everybody's long-term planning the sooner that we get this done. So that would be one request. I'd also like to comment on the, there's been some discussion around how we provide input to developers around the impact that their developing will have on capacity. And just really for the sake of our new board members too, I just want to kind of make sure I'm understanding correctly. And if I'm not, Mr. Farkas and Ms. Dickerson can jump in here. But when we are asked for a concurrency letter, we have to look at the schools that are directly impacted as well as the connected boundaries. And based on those capacity numbers, we have to provide the letter. So for example, if you want to build a school in South Tampa and it's going to directly impact Plant, Dale Mabry, and Grady Elementary, and they're all at capacity or above, we can't send a letter saying that it's going to put stress on the school district, because by state statute, we're required to also look at schools like Jefferson, which is under capacity. So we have to provide a letter that says, yes, there is capacity. So that's out of both of our hands at the county commission and the school board, but it is something that I think needs to be addressed at the state level. But a lot of times I'll get questions from constituents saying, well, why did the school district send in a letter that supported that developer? And, you know, our hands are tied in that regard, because we are guided by state statute on the data that we have to look at that informs that letter. I will say this, and it may be something that we can consider with the county commission. I've talked to Mr. Farkas and Ms. Dickerson about providing a letter to the city council members quarterly that really lists out all the new development that's been approved and the impact on the specific schools that they're boundary to, so that they can see the big picture of, you know, how these developments are impacting in very specific ways. And maybe we can do that for the county as well. It might be informative if you want a big high level view of how all the development is impacting schools very specifically. So I don't know if that's an interest with the county commission and if that's something that Mr. Farkas's staff could do. But like I said, I want to do it for the city council. It really came out of just a lot of development in District 2 in South Tampa, and it's really causing a huge capacity issue for my schools. And a lot of these developments are getting approved because of the state statute and the data required for us to look at to provide those letters of support. So I think if county commissioners and maybe even and the city council had these big picture kind of, you know, here's 5 developments that have been approved. You've done them one at a time, so you're looking at them in a very singular way. But by providing a letter that gives you a real overview of how all of those approvals of developments impact schools might, you know, just be helpful in the planning process as we move forward together. So I wanted to really get into just let me say, I know I can't ask too many questions about the West property, but thank you for looking outside the box. I think it's great because we are pooling that money to put 3 schools on one property. And as the team said, that's a big bang for your buck. I appreciate that. I'll save some of my questions around that after y'all go through the next step. But, that's very hopeful for me to see that plan. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So,
Okay.
Pat, what I think we'll look forward to, and I know we're getting there near, is hearing so far from Superintendent Davis, perhaps yourself. Where are we now in that process?
Well, we have a couple commissioners still that want to speak, but they've already spoken. So I'm going to delve into this a little bit now, and just process-wise, I've learned a few things. I'm not sure I can organize it all, and I have a couple of questions process-wise. So is it accurate to say that under state statute, that if there's a single school in Hillsborough County with capacity, that the school board is required to sign off on any other school in Hillsborough County? Like if there's capacity at Jefferson High School, that as long as that exists, that they need to sign off? I don't think I wanted an attorney to.
It's got to be a connected boundary, but yes, an attorney should answer this, Pat. We have Jim Porter here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Board of County Commissioners. This is Jim Porter. I'm the school board attorney. I think as we're talking about the process, I think there are a lot of questions that need to be answered, and understanding the respective roles that everyone plays in the development process. In the rezoning process, the school district staff receives notice of potential rezonings and provides data for the decision maker. The decision maker, of course, in the county is the zoning or land use hearing officer, and ultimately the county commission. The staff is not in a position to opine on whether a development is appropriate from a land use perspective. We're an agency that provides you data so that you can make your decision. And that's sort of the role that the school district plays. And with the comments that I think Board Member Hahn made are related to that. But as we go forward and we look at amending the interlocal agreement, I think these are the type of questions that can be clarified. And as Mr. Farkas suggested, if we can provide more context to the data that we're providing you, that would be appropriate. But I don't want to leave anyone with the understanding that we would be in a position legally to give opinions on whether a rezoning is appropriate or not from a land use perspective.
Right. I wasn't even
your decision.
Yeah.
So
I just
and think,
wondered. Yeah. I just was trying to clarify if it were true that any school in Hillsborough County with excess capacity, because certainly some have it.
Not any school. It has to be within the zone school district.
Okay. And so I think it would be valuable for us to understand those zone school districts. But the other would be that if that were true, then the other seeming safeguard here is during plating. And I'm telling you, I'm a little taken aback to hear that Sumner School, I know I heard that already, high school, is already 700 over capacity. Because as I understood, as developments were being approved, that there still kept being capacity at Sumner High School. And then all of a sudden, whoops, it opens and it's over 700 capacity. So I find that there's issues here with plating or something else. That should never be permitted to happen. However it's happened, I think the process needs to be clarified, and there should, to me, it would make sense that there would be, guard, some kind of gate at the point of, first of all, school capacity and knowing that of anything that's built, and second of all, at the plating stage. And, I don't even know I know that in my experience at land use, I've never seen a single school, a letter come from the schools saying that there's any capacity issue ever. And, we've asked that many times. As well, I've never heard if any single plating has ever been held up because of not having capacity at schools. And yet we're already a brand new high school, 700 over capacity. I think that's kind of shocking. I'll say this too, just a couple of things by background, since I've been on the board for a while now and watched this process. I'll say that, it seemed to be a problem that we didn't have schools and schools weren't being built for the first couple years, 2016, 17, 18. And I was told it's because there was no money to build schools. We were getting half of the impact fees of what a recent study showed we should have been getting, about $4,000 on average home. And surrounding counties were doing much more than that. We had a study come back that said it should be 8,200. I understood that when they didn't have money, unlike in prior times when the school board apparently borrowed money, bonded, whatever they needed to do to build schools, and that I've understood that that's led to some of their financial issues right now, that there's still debt from those times, but that we needed to get impact fees that were sufficient and we have already had a huge deficit because they hadn't been raised since 2006 to 2018. It was the meeting before COVID struck, so 2019, I guess, when we had this, and then it takes 90 days from there to start to, at least reasonably at this time, provide the kind of resources that we needed to provide for impact now. But we have this whole backlog. And the fact that, I understood that the reason there was a problem is because of a lack of money from impact fees and new development. So we have that, but now I'm looking at the plotting process. I'm looking at this, no one closing the gate and saying, we don't have school capacity now. And I think it needs to be something like that. I will tell you that the county that I consider most analogous to Hillsborough County in the state of Florida is Orange County. It's in Orlando, has approximately the same population, even the same square miles as us. It has a rural and an urban service area. And I looked, and they, in 2016, I looked at what they did. They were bemoaning the fact that they hadn't reviewed any of their school siting processes, any of their, what they had moving in 2016. And they created, between the school board and the county, a whole new, very revised process. And I had read about some of it. And I'll just say that this is one of the forms that I had that I printed off, and it tells the pending seat for every school. I don't know how often they give these out, but for every single school, elementary, middle, K through 8, high school in Orange County, every capacity. I would think that we should be doing the same. As well, I've always heard vague, and I'm not sure where it is, that we have to have 25 acres for an elementary school, 50 acres for a middle school, and 75 acres for a high school. I looked at their standards, their old standards that they thought were too generous were 15 acres, 25 acres, and 65 acres. They've even made that smaller, and they did it by rural service area and urban service area. To 11, 16, and 50 acres, respectively. And in urban service area, 7, 9, and 10 acres. No, I'm sorry, here. That was elementary schools by capacity. And then they had middle schools 12 acres and high schools 40 acres. So that would be some 35 acres in a high school, lower under their requirements than we have here in Hillsborough County. It makes a lot of sense to me. They also put their building heights as well up. And they did a lot of revisions that it seems to me would make sense for us to be looking at and designating in terms of how we cite our schools. I'll also say that I was alarmed. I mean, I think all of our school, and I'm sure the school board is as well, but our county commissioners were totally alarmed. We were being asked, and I think that's reasonable, to provide crossing guards at places. But I mean, there were so many schools around the county that had no sidewalks at all. Kids were walking through knee-high grass in uneven ground next to highways with cars speeding by because they only had 2-lane highways. It's just shocking, the conditions. And so I think it was 2018 that I made a motion that we have by board policy, a 2-mile safety zone around all of our schools and look at the infrastructure and, make sure that that is safe for our students, since the state requires any student that is up to 2 miles away to walk to school, which in some of these conditions is really terrible. And I think at any rate, 2 miles back and forth are a really long walk and can be a dangerous walk for many children. But that is, I'd like to see us work to have the state start to recognize that and provide funding so that children can have school buses, over a mile in many of these cases, or all these cases. But they really have, as I understand, cut back on their funding in that. And finally, just in terms of understanding that and I don't know if I understood whatever was said earlier about this, but the various processes with a hearing officer doing the high school, it seems to me all of these should go before the board, actually, especially the high school, and not be decided otherwise. But if I heard more about that, I might think of it differently. But these are all things I'd like to be considered as we move forward in our, wherever these kinds of things belong, in whatever part of this process or consideration. I'd really like to do that. And in Orange County, they brought in some consultants there to look at this specifically. And I'm wondering how much we have to do that, or how much we can borrow, because I think they did very complete work in Orange County on this, and very robust in a review. And it seems like we could be doing the same. And this is all, of course, under Florida state law. So I'm assuming some things could have changed, but I'm assuming it might be some good guidance for us.
Thanks, Pat. You want me to get to the next person on our side?
Sure.
Commissioner Kemp,
Oh.
this is Commissioner Myers. I've had my hand up from the beginning to speak.
I'm sorry, I haven't seen it up. I've been looking here, and I won't call on the others until you spoke, when we go back again. But we'll let the school board speak at this time, and then we'll go to you, Commissioner Myers.
Okay, and just indeed, the Orange County, we're doing most of what they're doing already, just for clarification, but we will definitely review our school board processes. And thank you, Pat, for all the suggestions. So we're going to go right now to Member Combs. And Member Combs?
I just have a couple comments or questions because, I don't have a strong background in this, to be honest. I'm a new school board member. So I guess my questions are, obviously, we really need to look at the interlocal agreement and see how we need to change that. Also, I would like to see some of the large developers be here involved in a meeting like this, because we really need, to me, it just seems like common sense that they need to be involved, because they need to be part of this. As we continue to grow, what does that look like? It seems like our largest developers should be out there talking to us. And the other part, because I care about children and accountability and making sure, as we develop this, are we allowing plots of land to allow like charter schools and private schools to end up supporting those students instead of our public schools? Because that needs to be really important part of the conversation. So I wonder why we don't have more developers involved, and what do we do in order to have that? And to me, it just seems common sense. You just can't build a huge development if you don't have the infrastructure for that community. So that's just from the outside speaking in. I don't understand. We need to get them more involved, and we need to make sure that as they grow, they're looking at what that community needs.
Thank you, Member Combs. Pat?
At this point, I'll go to Commissioner Myers. You're recognized.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Just like to say thanks to both administrations for bringing this meeting to fruition. This collaboration is just the beginning of many school projects. As we continue to move forward with our meetings, we're talking about the long-range planning, school siting, and growth. These items will always be a part of our agenda. We'll have the opportunity with many of the questions that have been asked today. This is new for me, but I do believe we would be able to answer some of those questions, knowing that we have 15 schools that would need to be built. Today just signifies the beginning for a win-win partnership between the school board and the county. So I would just like to, again, thank the administration for bringing this to us. We have been talking about this in many of our board meetings about we need to meet with the school board. And so today it has occurred. Thank you so much.
And
Yeah.
Chair Gray.
Okay, thanks, Gwen. And also, we're going to have Member Hahn wants to ask a question. And Pat, what do you think about, you want to finish it up with, our superintendent has some finishing statements, because we're looking
Well,
at 3 o'clock.
I think we have a couple more board members, and we can ask them to be briefer, the ones that have already spoken. But do you have another board member at this time that wants to speak?
No, Member Snively had to go away, her mom, and so we're just looking at really Member Hahn. Okay, so if you can ask a question right now.
Thank you, Chairwoman Gray. Appreciate the second round here real quick. I just wanted to close the loop on my prior comments because I think it might have caused a little confusion when I was talking about the state statute and how it mandates what we do. And basically, I guess to boil it down, is the state statute prevents the school district from saying no at rezoning meetings. That's actually the duty of the county commission. That's not something that state statute lets us do. So I just wanted to close the loop on that because it, obviously didn't come across in my comments. The other is, Mr. Farkas, do you share our 5-year plan with the county commission, correct?
Yes, ma'am, we sure do. Amber actually presented to the county commission and the planning commission.
And are they provided opportunity for feedback on that 5-year plan?
Yes, ma'am, we get comments from them.
Okay, and then how does the county commission, and I don't know who wants to answer this, how do you all budget for around that 5-year plan so that, we're kind of walking through this hand in hand? How does the county commission budget for the growth in schools and these prospective school sites?
I don't know if there's anyone that would specifically want to answer that. I mean, I think we budget in general for, and there's very little there to budget for. In fact, that's been a continuing issue that we don't have money as well as not school impact fee money, but mobility money that we haven't had available. We've lost literally hundreds of millions by my calculations in the last some time. But I know there's been a lot of roads on the to-do list for decades. But I don't know if there's anyone that might want to speak to that on the county side.
Madam Chair, Greg Horwedel, I would only say that, as you know, the list is long for our CIP projects, particularly related for transportation. The challenge we have sometimes is when a school site is approved by the school district, It may not be located on a road that has capacity. In fact, I think that's really the circumstance that we see with the West property, for example. We would love if every school site were located on a road that had sufficient capacity and had water and sewer service to it. Unfortunately, that doesn't always occur. I think that's part of what our challenge is at the respective staff level, is to make sure that we are sharing the information and that we do have current up-to-date data about not only our county projects, but also what the school district is looking for based upon any changing capacity issues that they see. I can commit to our staffs working together. We are in sync on making sure we help solve this. I don't think anyone here wants us to have these conversations, to be perfectly honest. We want to be able to have a very structured and linear process for building schools and making sure the infrastructure is in place for serving those schools. We will have a much better handle on what to report back to you by the end of the year. And I know I keep saying that, but really there's some more work that we need to do. And I'm confident that we'll get to that point.
Thank you. And I just wanted to just get, some insight into how you're communicating around the planning pieces of this. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll do some, hopefully, quick wrap-ups here on the board side, county commission side of this. Commissioner Overman, you're recognized.
Thank you. And a lot of what has been spoken today was basically what I was trying to get at earlier today. Apparently wasn't as succinct as I needed to be. My challenge is that given that 15 of the schools that are needed and projected over the next 15 years, are all in South County or are projected to be all in South County. And I don't know whether the lot size is any indication of the number of children that are estimated for a school, but typically a lot of those lots are larger than what we see in the urban core, which may indicate more children in a suburban area than would be in a urban area. But that being said, we should, when we're approving projects and determining mobility fees and other fees, impact fees, stormwater, all those other things that the developer has to pay to create the housing stock that actually impacts our schools, we should know what the percentage of that allocation of the tax revenues that have to go into South County and the infrastructure that's necessary to serve not only the community, but also the schools. So when we know that that's our budget and we recognize that in years 1 through 5, for example, in your illustration, that we have the need for 3 schools, 2 of which are pre-K to 8 and 1 is a high school, that the partnership solution we just looked at may be absolutely necessary so that the projected revenues are available to build the infrastructure around that school and allow that developer to participate in covering the cost of the infrastructure that may be in a deficit because we have not charged enough in fees to fix the past deficits that we have, that we allow those mobility fees to fix the current and future, because it's that collateral extra that keeps growing to the problem that actually makes it so difficult to manage. And which is why I suggested earlier that in the interlocal agreement, that maybe it needs to come back to a land use process rather than an administrative process. Because while I hear that the school district cannot actually deny the application, and it's on us to deny it, it puts us in a better position to be able to negotiate with the developers and the school district and the community to have the monies available to actually fix the roads and infrastructure that we're required to do by state when we have to actually have infrastructure in a 2-mile radius around a new school. And that we can't fix that without having a more land use approach and conversation. So that's why I wanted to ask about the permitting process, when the infrastructure is planned for, when the revenues are calculated, so that we use those revenues to actually fix the infrastructure around that school if possible. And I think we've been able to accomplish that with this most recent example. And I'd like to see us look at opportunities to do that then. Thank you.
Okay. And finally, Commissioner Cohen.
Oh, Mr. Cohen. Okay, then we have Member Perez wants to make a
I'm
statement.
sorry, I didn't take my hand down from before.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
And if we can have Member Perez?
Member Perez? You're on, Member Perez.
Yes, thank you. We're going to have information coming forward and bring forward to us as a board as to how many students are being bused across the county. And we need this information in order for us to assess how the busing of students across the county is affecting the overcrowding from one side of the county to the other. And leaving other schools in this county, half empty and virtually empty. So once this information is analyzed, this would provide a clearer picture as to how many schools are really needed, in this district. And it would also provide us a clearer picture as to assisting students closer to home, and in order to, improve their grades, help them to participate in after-school sports, etc. But also, it will open the conversation to also having to get these schools in better condition for these students, and wonder why these students are being bused across our county. But, this is something that we really have to look at. Why part of our schools and one side of our county remain virtually empty when the other schools are busting at the seams? And we really need to stand back and analyze that. And, once we balance that out, really then see how many schools are really needed from there. I think we're reacting from a knee-jerk reaction without looking at this issue. Nobody's talked about that. Nobody's spoken to that analysis across this whole entire county. We have a large county here, and these things really need to be looked at and assessed, I believe, before we start putting up more schools when a lot of our schools in this county are virtually empty. That's my comment.
Thank you, Member Perez. Pat?
Thank you. Yes. And with that, we will wrap up the board discussions of this, and we will move to next steps with Christopher Farkas and Greg Hordell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we have pretty much discussed already what we intend to do with the interlocal agreement and what the data sharing plans are. So we'll plan, unless we hear differently from County Administrator Weiss or Superintendent Davis. We're going to continue down that path and bring something back to our respective boards and have a further conversation. We are optimistic that we have a lot of room that we can make improvement. We are confident that we will end up being able to paint that path, if you will, so that people understand exactly what's required and what we're going to do in a specific time frame. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Very much appreciate the conversation.
And Pat, Superintendent Davis would like to say a few.
We're moving to the closing remarks for Superintendent Davis as well as County Administrator Wise at this time.
Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate it, Chair Kemp, and thank everyone for their continued civic leadership within Hillsborough County. I would say that a lot of conversation today. I think that as we all agree that we need to continue to work in concert under the leadership of Mrs. Wise, and the same token with Greg, we've made some remarkable strides in the last few months to be able to address some of the dire needs that we have as an organization. As we move forward, I think that we just have to make that commitment related to, in a very short period of time, getting into the interlocal agreement and making adjustments, as particularly to the ones to being able to have really clear expectations and a really clear, consistent review related to timing. And that's consistent with looking at each particular zone, whether we have an issue in one particular zone and it may take 45 days or in that same zone, or another zone, it may take 3 months, just getting that consistency so that we can all be on the same page and move in an expedited manner. Also being able to make certain we have a clear transportation methodology and having an understanding of what ownerships of both sides have to be able to create the build. And, and I think over the last couple of months, we've done a really good job working collectively to potentially select sites that may work for both parties. Because overall, we want to be able to make certain that we create the best experiences we can educationally. And as we talk about the expansion and the boom that we have in Sumner, which we have around 3,400 students, that's a reality. And regardless if it was a particular historical build that may have not happened with vision, this is the situation when we are in, and we've got to create the fortitude and the Band-Aids particularly to get out of that. But long-term planning, I do agree, to allow us to have a systemic approach to be successful. So my commitment on my side is making certain that our staff has and will continue to be readily available with the Board of County Commission staff, which that has been really great. And we will share any information that we have in order to make informed decisions. So all that to say is thank you for your efforts. Thank you for your time. I do agree with the interlocal agreement being addressed prior to January. That is a great ask. And we look forward to doing whatever we need to do to be able to select sites that actually have the infrastructure or the future for the infrastructure to be able to open the doors and serve children in a proper manner every single day. So once again, thank you to our school board members. Thank you to all the board members from the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you for all the staff members on both sides, Chris Farkas and Amber on our side, and your sides as well with Greg and Adam. And we look forward to working and doing whatever we can to make this a reality to be able to serve our children in Hillsborough. So thank you.
Thank you. And County Administrator Bonnie Wise.
Thank you. And without completely saying what everybody else has been saying, as I've been listening to the conversation today, a big thanks to all the staffs and to the boards for challenging us to do better, to think differently, and to be more creative. So, a few words you've heard today: cooperation, creativity, and commitment. And I want to assure you that we will continue in that manner, and we will come to an interlocal agreement that we could all be proud of, and get that to you hopefully by the end of the year or so. And then we will continue to work together. We all know that surprises don't work well. And maybe in the past we've had a little bit of that, and that the pre-planning and the discussions will all have us come to better conclusions and a better product in the long run that serves our entire community well. So we'd like to thank you for everyone's attention and for the cooperation today, and look forward to what we're going to continue to bring to you in the future.
Pat, can I just say a few closing remarks, or do you want to say yours first?
No, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to thank all the county commissioners and our board. We just came up with 4 congruent types of messages that as we move forward, along with the 3 C's that Bonnie mentioned: collaboration, and I can't remember the second 2, but you know, we're all looking for the same. But I know that we have to revise our ILA. I know that we should and we will review our own school board processes. Pat, you mentioned. I know also that we should expedite the timeline. When I say I, this is all of us here on the board. And also, I also wrote down loopholes in the IRA must be corrected legally and emphatically as we move forward. I look forward to the work that we have ahead of us. And I just want to thank every one of you for looking out after our children, our students. They are our future, and we need to pay attention to making sure their school environment is facilitated, and we can do that jointly. Thank you.
Thank you. And this has been a joint meeting of the Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners and the Hillsborough County School Board. And I think it was a very valuable exchange that, hopefully we can move forward as we have been in the past few months and start to really review the processes we have in place and how we can do better by both the children and families of Hillsborough County as we build infrastructure needed for our students and for our communities. So thank you to everybody, and with that, we'll adjourn.